Hey Mets fans, welcome back to the channel, and yes, we are back at with video 2 here on the channel today. If you haven't checked out our previous one discussing Taijuan Walker, make sure you do that. That was a great discussion as we were trying to wrap our heads around what is next for the Mets right now that they are out of the Trevor Bauer sweepstakes, addressing the rotation and still other holes of this lineup. As spring training is becoming closer and closer by the day, there is still plenty of belief that the Mets are in fact going to be addressing more than one hole currently in the lineup. So now that we address specifically free agency with our latest video on Walker, let's talk about more of the trade avenues for the Mets. And as we touched on here in the channel a couple weeks ago with Eugenio Suarez and Sonny Gray as a possible blockbuster option that was originally proposed for Mets Mesmerized, as they had an industry source indicating that the Mets have shown interest, have given calls about them. What about the other NL Central blockbuster option, that being in Kris Bryant, that we've talked about plenty, but also Kyle Hendricks, really killing two birds with one stone, right? So that's what we'll be taking a look at in today's video. Everything there is to know about both these players' games, their possible connection, if any, currently with the New York Mets, and trust me, there's some, and everything in between. And as always, guys, make sure you stay all the way until the end of the video for all the deets and all my thoughts on Hendricks, Bryant, what they would bring to the table, what type of trade package the Mets would possibly have to give up to land these guys, and how likely it is for the Mets this offseason, and so much more. And if you guys do in fact end up enjoying this kind of Mets content, want to see more great Mets content like this, make sure to smash that like and subscribe on, share this video with your friends, put on the notification bell, all those great things. We have seen tremendous growth here on the channel in such a short period of time, so thank you all so much kindly. But enough of me talking, let's get right into this video. Here we have 28-year-old Chicago Cubs third baseman and Kris Bryant. At a towering 6'5", 230 pounds, originally drafted by the Cubs in the first round back in 2013, Bryant has been one of the better hitters in all of baseball for the past 5+ years, and has also been a strong third baseman when it comes to his glove. And in 2020, however, in the shortened season, only playing 34 games due to injury and 131 at-bats, had 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, a batting average of a career low 206, a 293 on-base percentage, a 351 slugging, and a 644 OPS. But in the 2019 season is really where he showed out, and has been for numerous times in his career already. But in 147 games played and 543 at-bats, he had 31 home runs, 77 RBIs, a 282 batting average, a 382 on-base percentage, a 521 slugging, and a 903 OPS. And in 740 career games played with the Cubs and 2,774 at-bats, Bryant has racked up 142 home runs, 414 RBIs, a 280 batting average, a 380 on-base percentage, a 508 slugging, and an 889 OPS. Bryant first bursted on the scene tremendously for the Chicago Cubs, becoming the 2015 NL Rookie of the Year, and in 2016 having a crucial part to the Cubs winning the World Series for the first time in literally forever, being the NL MVP in 2016 as well, and also being a 3-time NL All-Star in the 2015, 2016, and 2019 seasons. Secondly, for the Chicago Cubs, we have 31-year-old right-handed pitcher and Kyle Hendricks. At a strong 6'3", 190 pounds, originally drafted in the 8th round back in 2011 by the Texas Rangers, had another strong campaign in the 2020 season, in which in 12 games played and 81 innings pitched, racked up 6 wins, 5 losses, a 2.88 ERA, 64 strikeouts, a 1 WHIP, 7.08 K per 9, and a 0.89 walks per 9. And in 2019, 30 games played with the Cubs and 177 innings pitched, racked up 11 wins, 10 losses, a 3.46 ERA, 150 strikeouts, a 1.13 WHIP, a 7.63 K per 9, and a 1.63 walks per 9. And throughout his career for Hendricks, in 175 games played and 1,047.1 innings pitched, has 69 wins, 48 losses, a 3.12 career ERA, 882 strikeouts, and a 1.10 WHIP. Alright guys, and to take a further look here on Kyle Hendricks and his game in particular, because we've deep dived Kris Bryant plenty, but Hendricks in regards to his pitches does have 4 different ones in his arsenal, starting off with his sinker, which is around 87 miles per hour, his changeup around 80 miles per hour, his four-seam fastball around 87 miles per hour, and his curveball around 72 miles per hour. His moneymakers are in fact the changeup and the sinker. They're normally 1 and 2 and have been for the past couple years, at least in his career, in regards to his strikeout ratio. His changeup is go-to when it comes to strikeouts, and then his sinker isn't too far behind him. He's had some strong numbers, but this guy has some amazing off-speed stuff and has been a consistent guy in this rotation for the Cubs for years now. As we know, this isn't a surprise. Still in the prime of his career at the age of 31 and playing a give, and is under team control here for multiple years. He's making $14 million in the 2021, 2022, and 2023 season, and then he has a club option or can be vested in the 2024 season. So regardless, it seems like he'll kind of be probably a free agent at that point, because it will be vested if he's in fact top top 3 in the NL and Cy Young voting. If he is in fact that case, if he does in fact get paid for that year, he'll be making 16 mil, but the likelihood is that he will be a free agent after the 2023 season, or at least to that some type of nature. So I wouldn't put much stock into it as of right now. You have a couple more years of Kyle Hendricks still in the prime of his career, and not too lengthy of a contract either, which would really bode well, as we know. If you want to look at here from Baseball Savant, just taking an even further look on his numbers, it is telling that this guy, even while having one of the lowest average velocities for his fastball and all the MLB among its starting pitchers, is kind of similar to Rich Hill that we touched on in a previous video, as the Mets have shown interest in him. A guy with low velocity, but with great nasty off-speed stuff, and that is definitely the case with Kyle Hendricks. Still very consistent. And if you look at Kris Bryant as well, he has 1 year left on his contract, is a rental, as we know, just making under 20 million, 19.5 mil to be exact, for the 2020 season, and then he's a free agent. So the question is, would the Mets be in the running for this? Absolutely. As we know, the Cubs all offseason have really parted ways with more guys than they have in return, starting with Theo Epstein, as we touched on, originally stepping down, then non-tendering guys like Kyle Schwarber, then also trading off Yu Darvish and their catcher Cartini, and returns for Carantini, I might be saying his name wrong, I apologize, and returns for literally no assets to immediately help the roster outside of Zach Davies, who's a solid back of the rotation starter for the most part, but nothing crazy for Darvish, who was just one of the Cy Young Award runner-ups in the 2020 short season, along with DeGrom and, yes, Trevor Bauer. So, and if you look at this latest report here that I touched on in a previous video, however, which makes this a little conflicting, is that according to the past week or two here from the chairman for the Chicago Cubs, it has been stated that he has the intentions of increasing payroll flexibility so that way they can still compete. As we know, they have since signed Jock Peterson for the outfield, really Kyle Schwarber's replacement, who has really a better bat at this point in his career. Even though that he's very inconsistent still, he can provide the bat, and they got him for a 1 year deal, a couple mil cheaper than what Schwarber signed with the Nationals. So it was a little surprising when they made that deal. It looks like the Cubs are to some extent trying to be relatively competitive in the NL Central, but even after Arenado now landing with the St. Louis Cardinals, it seems more and more likely that the Cubs may very well be in selling mode sooner rather than later. With Bryant being a free agent after this upcoming season, most likely not going to stay with the Cubs, because you also have Javi Baez and Anthony Rizzo that you're working with that are guys that are pending UFAs, and Kyle Hendricks, where you know you can maximize his return. Now seems like the time, and this is all originally proposed from what the Toronto Blue Jays did prior to signing Marcus Semien for the infield. They were in some decent talks, at least. I don't know how significant the interest and the discussions were, but there was a point where it looks like Kris Bryant and Kyle Hendricks looked like that they were for sure landing in Toronto, or at least close to. And you see a report here from a reporter for the Toronto Blue Jays through TSN, was asked a question basically to confirm, are there actually interest-share connections? And he said yes. So I just want to clarify that with you guys, because Kyle Hendricks and Kris Bryant have been on the trading block, whether it's official or unofficial, this offseason, and they would do well, tremendously well for the Mets, because very similar to a Sonny Gray and Eugenio Suarez situation, which I might touch on again in a further video, weighing the options between the two here, really what would be the best fit for the Mets. But between that route in the NL Central, now this one is where you might get more of an impact, even if it's shorter term, because the question is, what are you giving up? Well, this is exactly like the Lindor and Carrasco situation, and the Mets do in fact go full through down this route. As we know, the Mets have reportedly shown interest in Kris Bryant over the past couple months, and it's yet to be seen if they have rekindled that, but there's been a lot of belief that another blockbuster could be up their sleeve now that Trevor Bauer is no longer in the reins as being in this rotation, and add one more piece to the rotation that would really kill two birds with one stone. You add Hendricks to really solidify that rotation. In my mind, is arguably the best in all the MLB. Again, one of, for sure. They're already ranked through the MLB as top 3, and they would get that much better with Hendricks. Oh my God, would that be something? He'd be stellar in there. Him or Sonny Gray, either one would be tremendous. But for the Cubs discussion here today, adding Kris Bryant as well, still in the prime of his career, we should not really look too far deep into his 2020 performance, because he was dealing with injuries, and when fully healthy, he can really be a star player. He's a 5-tool player. Bryant is a guy that you can have at third base, but if you need to throw him in the outfield, he can handle that, and the left too. Again, I don't think that's a route the Mets would utilize him in, but they have their options there. And if you're looking at what are you coughing up for someone like him, well, realistically, the Mets should not have to be coughing up much more, or just around the same that what they coughed up for both Lindor and Carrasco, if not cheaper, because as we know, in that trade, the Mets coughed up Ahmad Rosario, who's a solid shortstop, but really struggles defensively at this point in his career. You have Andres Jimenez, who looks like a very young up-and-coming shortstop as well, that can play second base. But then you also have two out of top 10 prospects, or at least one of them was a number 9, that being Josh Green and Josh Wolf and Isaiah Green. So this type of trade, right away, JD Davis, and I know you guys are going to be upset for all my JD Davis stands out there. I love JD, don't get me wrong, but he would definitely be going in this trade. I don't see how you don't if you're acquiring Kris Bryant. Then you're looking at possibly Brandon Nimmo, Nimmo as well, because as we know, the Mets did just address the outfield currently with Albert Amora Jr. as a depth move, but they still, at the time of recording this, are still interested in JBJ should they have the DH. I think that they're banking on a little bit too much right now because the DH feels awfully uncertain. That's going to still happen in the NL this season, but again, it has yet to be determined. But in that route, if Brandon Nimmo is more susceptible because, say, they land a JBJ, for instance, then that is a route they possibly go down and part ways with him. Maybe Jeurys Familia, if the Cubs are willing to take on that salary, but I wouldn't bet on it. He would still be solid for their bullpen, no less. And then you're looking at still some prospects, two guys that I would say are probably outside of top 10, which would make sense for them going forward. So a very similar type of proposed package, just like what we saw with Lindor and Carrasco, in my mind, should be enough to land these guys in Bryant and Hendricks, because you have Hendricks with control, just like Carrasco's situation. Then Lindor, same situation, a pending UFA at the year's end like Bryant. And if the Mets are doing this route, they're not trading for Kris Bryant for him to be a rental. They will have the full intention of locking him up long term, which could make things a little tricky, because then you would have Bryant that you're working with, then you have Lindor, then you also already have Conforto, Stroman, Thor. They have a lot of guys they need to extend. We know this. Am I really worried about it? No, I'm not, because I do believe that the Mets have put themselves in a great situation, and not landing Bauer does help them save money, because if they are landing both these guys, they will at that point probably go over the luxury tax threshold, but it's not going to be an issue for them. If they were willing to go 40 mil for the first 2 years of a 3-year deal for Bauer, that's easily going over the threshold, so this would be no different for them, because if you're coughing up just around 20 mil and then 14, okay, then you're looking at what, 34 mil or so that you're coughing up in this type of trade and acquiring these guys, which is still cheaper than Bauer. So it puts things in perspective. The only difference is that you're giving up some significant assets. So is this a route the Cubs would like to go down? Well, we've seen discussions between Bryant and the Mets in the past. At the time, they were very much interested, from one report was indicating, including our catching prospect in Francisco Alvarez, which is not a route I think would be smart for the Mets to really give up a top 10 prospect there. But if they are able to give up some, maybe two out of top 10 prospects, or another number 9, where you're not really giving up the farm, because again, Bryant is a rental, there's no guarantee that they will be able to lock him up long term as another Scott Boras client, if my memory serves me correct. At least you have Hendricks long term, but this is a trade that will make more sense in more ways than one for the Mets should they go down it. I'm under the firm belief that they are weighing that option along with Sonny Gray and Suarez still, as long as they don't plan to fully address the rest of their woes, both in the rotation and third base and in the outfield, as we know, all strictly free agency. If they do that, then you can kiss a trade package goodbye, because it wouldn't make sense for them at that point. They do in fact land another starter like Taijuan Walker that I touched on in my previous video today, so check that out if you're interested, guys, among some other options. If they landed Justin Turner at third base, that is your short-term third base option versus, say, going in on Kris Bryant long-term. So the Mets have their options. We know this. A trade package, in my mind, feels really like a strong possibility for them. They have the assets to make it happen, and it's not like Kris Bryant is already locked up long-term, where you're acquiring a guy like an Arenado, for instance, as well, where you would probably have to give up a haul, even though Arenado, I understand, they were trying to get rid of his contract. With the assumption that the Rockies weren't, then it would be a much different type of deal, but that's not the case in what we saw transpire between the Cardinals and the Rockies. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you feel about Kyle Hendricks and Kris Bryant landing Queens with the New York Mets for the next and last blockbuster of this offseason? As we know, we're inching closer and closer to start of spring training. I'm under the firm belief that we're going to see more moves. It would be very hard pressed for me to say that they win at this point in time. It just makes more sense than one. If you look at third base, they are not sold on JD Davis, and I love JD, I really do. I wouldn't mind seeing him being a part of this team going forward, but realistically, there is a lot of belief as to them addressing third base, and not just a decent upgrade, but a significant one, and Kris Bryant would definitely be that. Bryant is a guy that still has a stellar glove as it is. Yes, I know he's not a constant gold glover. He's not even on the same spectrum as Arenado, but he's definitely an upgrade over JD right now. Has a bat that, I mean, in a change of scenery, getting out regularly, I think would bode him well, even in Citi Field, which I know hasn't been the best hitter's park, but they've still been trending upward. This offense is elite as it is. It's one of the best in baseball. You add Bryant in there, it gets that much better. You add Hendricks, and then bam, right like that, just like that, you are in fact a World Series contender, and you're up with the top dogs currently in the NL, along with, really at that point, I would say you set yourself a decent gap, not significant, but a decent one over the Braves in the division. And then you're looking at the Dodgers and the Padres among some other teams where it's like, okay, you're really with the top dogs now we'll see how you perform. So they can extend Bryant, which they wouldn't do this trade if they couldn't, and they can make this happen with the proper assets. And I think the Mets should definitely give this a consideration, because again, the Cubs need on-base guys. Nimmo would make a lot of sense if the the Mets do in fact still address the outfield with the JBJ or someone else where they maybe get DH flexibility, if by some grace of God the Mets are able to get the DH for this season, then all hell is going to break loose in a good way for the Mets, because that means that they can handle whether moving Nimmo to left or train him, one of him and Dom. And again, I don't want to see either of them being dealt. I'm just saying it wouldn't be surprising this type of trade package, because you know that you're trying to acquire Bryant to keep him long term, and Hendricks, you have longevity with his contract, so one of those guys would make sense. But then you have JBJ at center field or whoever you're going after still there as a possibility should you have the DH. Then you can have Dom at first and then Pete as a DH, or vice versa, alternate, whatever you want to do, and they are cooking. Again, this offense is deadly, one of the best in the MLB. You bring Kris Bryant, it just gets that much better for a guy that still is only a year removed from having a really strong 2019 season and can really still rekindle what he has been in previous years in his career. I don't think this is an end-all situation for Bryant, given his 30-game stretch or so in 2020 dealing with injuries. A healthy Kris Bryant is still a very effective player and definitely would be a huge upgrade for the Mets at third base. And Kyle Hendricks, oh baby, would that be something in that rotation. Either one of these options would be great, but them together in a trade package would really help the Mets gain where they want to be World Series contenders as soon as this upcoming 2020 season. So as always, guys, let me know your thoughts again in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. If you ended up enjoying this kind of Mets content and want to see more great Mets content like this, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button, share this video with your friends, play on the notification bell, all those great things. Thank you all so much for the countless support again, guys. Please help us get a 5,000 plus subscribers. We are so close, and I really want you to be part of this community if you aren't already. So thank you again. It means a lot. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you soon.